In August of 1996, something flooded the internet that nobody could explain. Hundreds of messages, no sender, no meaning, and one phrase that still haunts internet sleuths 30 years later. This was before Google, before broadband, before most people had even heard the word internet outside a tech magazine. Before most people had even heard the word internet outside a tech magazine. What I'm about to show you has been called the oldest unsolved mystery on the internet, and by the end of this video, you'll understand why that claim might be the strangest part of the story. Random words, no grammar, no structure, just noise. And yet, decades later, people are still trying to crack it. This is the story of Markovian parallax denigrate. To understand why this mystery even matters, you need to understand where it happened. Not Reddit, not a forum, something older, Usenet. Usenet launched in 1980. Think of it as a giant digital bulletin board split into thousands of topic-based news groups for religion, music, politics, hobbies, anything. There were no usernames the way we think of them today. Most posts carried your real name and email, pulled straight from your email program. No anonymity, no moderation in most groups, which makes what happened next even stranger, because whoever did this didn't want to be found, and on a network built on real identities, that took effort. At 3 a.m. on August 5, 1996, something started posting, and it didn't stop for hours. Hundreds of messages began appearing across at least a dozen news groups, completely unrelated ones, Christian forums, music boards, anti-spam watchdog groups, all hit at once. Senders' names and emails were randomized and partially scrambled. No two posts came from the same identity. Reading directly, deadpan. And the messages themselves looked like this. Strings of real English words, but with zero relationship to each other. No sentence, no pattern anyone could immediately find. Every single message, and no matter what news group it landed in, carried the exact same subject line. Markovian parallax denigrate, 3 words that meant nothing together. And somehow, that's exactly what made people obsessed. So the question became who or what was sending these. The first theory was the boring one, and it's probably the correct one. Most Usenet users at the time assumed this was either spam or an early experiment with something called a Markov chain, a basic algorithm that strings words together based on probability, with zero understanding of meaning, literally where the name comes from. Markovian, as in Markov chain. It was probably right there in the subject line the whole time. Researchers who later analyzed the surviving posts found that certain words, including Markovian itself, appeared far more often than statistical chance would allow. One theory says those repeated words were deliberate, a trick so the spammer could filter their own flood of messages and watch the chaos unfold in real time. A signature basically, proof of their own handiwork. But not everyone bought the spam theory, because in 1996 the Cold War wasn't that far in the rearview mirror. Some Usenet users compared the gibberish to numbers stations, real radio broadcasts where intelligence agencies read strings of numbers to operatives in the field, encoded messages hidden in apparent nonsense. The idea was simple. What if this wasn't random at all? What if Markovian parallax denigrate was a modern number station, hidden instructions, disguised as garbage, broadcast across the most public network in the world, specifically because nobody would think to look there? People tried. For years, hobbyist cryptographers picked the text apart, looking for acrostics, hidden letters, repeating sequences, anything. Nobody found one, not a single confirmed cipher in almost 30 years, which either means there's nothing there, or whoever built it did their job perfectly. And then the story gets a name attached to it, a real one. And this is where it gets genuinely strange. One of the only surviving original posts had a name in its email header, Susan Lindauer. If that name doesn't ring a bell, years after these posts, a woman named Susan Lindauer became publicly known as an alleged US intelligence asset, later accused of acting as an unregistered agent connected to Iraq in the lead-up to the Iraq War. When internet sleuths years later realized her name was attached to the 1996 posts, the spam theory suddenly felt a lot less convincing to a lot of people. Except, there's a problem. The Susan Lindauer tied to the Usenet account wasn't the same Susan Lindauer who later became a public figure. 2 different women, same name. Both women were eventually contacted. Both denied any connection to the posts. The Usenet Lindauer reportedly lived a quiet, unremarkable life. Nothing about her suggested any motive or capability to run this. Now, here's the part most videos about this topic won't tell you, and it's the most interesting part of the entire case. For over 15 years after it happened, almost nobody talked about Markovian parallax denigrate. It wasn't treated as a legendary unsolved mystery. Most people who saw it in 1996 just assumed it was spam and moved on. It wasn't until 2012, 16 years later, that an article reintroduced this case to the internet. And that's when the spy theory, the cipher theory, all of it really took off. Later, researchers who went back through the original sources found something uncomfortable. A lot of the mystery had been built retroactively, repeated by blog after blog, video after video, each one citing the last, few going back to check the original 1996 record. In other words, this might not be a 30-year-old unsolved mystery so much as a 30-year-old non-event that the internet itself turned into a legend, one repost at a time. The most likely explanation is still the boring one, spam, or an early language generation experiment amplified into folklore by an internet that loves a good unsolved case more than it loves a clear answer. So what actually happened on August 5th, 1996? Probably nothing supernatural. Probably not a spy, possibly just a bored programmer testing a script, or a troll who wanted to watch the chaos. But nobody has ever stepped forward. Nobody has ever confirmed it. And the original posts, most of them are gone forever, lost before anyone thought they were worth saving. Which means the real mystery was never really the message, it was always us, and how easily a few hundred lines of nonsense can turn into 30 years of legend. If you ever see something online that looks like gibberish, maybe don't assume there's a hidden meaning, or maybe that's exactly what they want you to think.